What if I told you I bet on sports the same way Wall Street traders move millions in the stock market? Well, I've made thousands in profit betting sports, and more importantly, I've helped others ditch the emotional chaos and start treating betting like a business. But if you're watching this video, then you're probably not here for another hot pick or max unit banger. You're here because you take betting seriously. Because impulse bets and chasing losses doesn't work and never will. Meanwhile, more investors are moving into sports betting and quietly printing money because it's less competitive than Wall Street. But it won't stay that way forever, because the more hedge funds and data geeks that start sniffing around, the harder it becomes to find an edge in sports betting. So, in this video, I'm breaking down the 8-step system I use that mirrors how pro traders think so you can bet smarter and finally stop donating to the bookie's vacation fund. But first, there is one shift that completely changed how I approach every bet, and it's how professional traders print money in the stock market. So back in the early 2000s, Michael Burry was a hedge fund manager analyzing mortgage-backed securities. These were giant bundles of home loans that Wall Street treated like gold. But Burry dug into the data and saw something everyone else missed. Tons of those loans were trash. People with bad credit, no income verification, no way to repay, and he realized the whole market was mispriced. So the risk was way higher than what the banks were charging. So he bet against them, and everyone thought he was crazy until the housing market crashed, and his fund made hundreds of millions. This is an example of an expected value play. Burry saw the market was underestimating risk, so he bet against it at a great price. And the same idea in sports betting. If a team has a better chance to win than the odds suggest, that line is undervalued. And if you keep taking bets like that, where the numbers are in your favor, you're expected to profit in the long run. But if you're serious about finding positive expected value bets on your own, and you want to learn from others doing the same, I'm starting a community built exactly for that. We don't share picks or hype, because our philosophy is all about building systems to beat the market. So if that sounds like your kind of group, there's a link in the description to learn how you can join for free. But earlier we talked about finding positive expected value bets. So how do you actually find picks that are profitable? Well, there's a strategy that is known as the top-down betting approach, and here's how it works. Let's say you walk into a supermarket and see two shelves. One has the same bottle of water for $3. The other has it for $2. Which bottle of water would you buy? Obviously the cheaper one, right? You just got a lower price for the same thing. And that's exactly how sharp bettors see odds. All the sportsbooks use their own algorithms and get their odds from different places, so they often come up with different numbers. Because of that, there are times when sharp money moves the market, but some books are slow to react. That's your window. You step in and grab the better price before it disappears. Now, sportsbooks hate this. If you do it well and often enough, some of them will ban your account. But don't stress, I'll talk later about how to deal with that. But just know that if you're consistent and disciplined, this strategy alone can make you hundreds of thousands over time. That's why I always recommend it to beginners. But let's be real, we don't want to be sitting there like a nerd, manually scrolling through 12 different sportsbooks, squinting at lines like we're decoding the Matrix. I used to do that, and it sucked. But luckily, there are tools you can use to automate this process. These tools can scan all the books for you, compare the odds side by side, and flag when one sportsbook is offering value. Personally, I use OddsJam, but there are many options out there, and they all basically do the same thing, so use whichever one you prefer. Now, a lot of beginners think these tools are cheat codes that print money on autopilot. This is not the case, and the people who will tell you this either sell the software or get paid to promote it. You can't just fire up OddsJam, blindly hammer every plus EV play, and expect to get rich. It doesn't work like that. That's how you end up betting Lithuanian ping pong at 3 a.m. and wondering why your bankroll's bleeding. The tool shows you potential value, but you still need to apply common sense. For starters, make sure at least 5 major books are offering lines on the game. If only 2 or 3 books are posting odds, there's a good chance the market isn't sharp yet, and that edge might be fake. Same goes for super niche leagues and weird markets. Try to avoid stuff like alternate spreads, obscure player props, or exact score bets. They can look like plus EV, but not many people are betting on it. So it doesn't take much money to move the lines, and now you're no longer plus EV. But going back to Wall Street traders, and there's another crucial mistake you need to be aware of. Get this wrong, and it doesn't matter how sharp your picks are, you can lose everything. Let me show you an example. So back in 1995, a trader named Nick Leeson was working at Barings Bank, one of the oldest banks in England. He started making risky bets in the derivatives market, and when they didn't go his way, he didn't cut losses. Instead, he doubled down, then doubled again. Sounds familiar, right? This is the Dejan Martingale strategy that LockDaddy69 preaches about on his Twitter. But Nick Leeson was hiding the losses in a secret account, thinking one big win would fix everything. It didn't. The trades spiraled out of control, and by the time anyone noticed, he'd racked up £1.3 billion in losses, enough to bankrupt the entire bank. All because he thought confidence could beat risk. And this false confidence is exactly why most sports bettors go broke. Real traders don't go all in on a hunch, they risk 1 to 2% per trade. And the same goes for sharp bettors. They don't double down or chase after losses because that's not strategy, that's emotion. Instead, they manage their bankroll, stick to the plan, and let the edge do the work. Because small, smart bets over and over is how you compound positive expected value and actually stay in the game. And if you want a simple system to help you build that foundation, I put together the exact system I used to make my first $1,000 with sports betting. It walks you through the exact steps to grow your bankroll the smart way, without praying for a 6-leg rent parlay. I'll drop the link below if you want to grab it for free. So we now know that bankroll management is crucial if you want to profit with sports betting, but there's a little trick that the top 1% of sports bettors use. And it's so powerful that it's also what investment funds use to grow their portfolios. It's a formula known as the Kelly criterion, and it basically tells you much of your bankroll to bet based on 2 things: the odds you're getting and the probability you think you'll win. Now, I'm not going to throw math at you like it's a stats class, but I'll put the formula up on screen if you're interested. But here's what you actually need to know. Kelly helps you figure out how much to bet based on how big your edge is. If your edge is big, you bet more. If your edge is small, you bet less. Now, I don't recommend using full Kelly because it can get aggressive fast. Let's take this example. You're getting plus 100 odds and you believe your true win probability is 60%. Plug that into the formula and Kelly says to bet 20% of your bankroll. That's too much in my opinion. All it takes is for the star player to have a stinker and you've just nuked 1/5 of your bankroll. That's why most sharps don't use full Kelly. They use half Kelly or quarter Kelly to stay in the game long enough for the math to work. That just means you take the full Kelly number and cut it in half or in quarters. So instead of betting 20%, you bet 10% or 5%, which is still too aggressive in my opinion. So in all honesty, I just stick to flat units of 0.5 to 2%. Quarter Kelly usually lands in that range anyway, and it's a lot easier than pulling out a calculator like a nerd every time I want to place a bet. But what if I told you there's a professional bettor who built a Premier League football club and is beating billionaire teams using the same models he uses to crush sportsbooks? Well, let me show you how data beats money every time. So, in the early 2000s, Brighton were a nobody club. They were barely surviving in England's 3rd tier, playing in a rented stadium with barely any fans. But fast forward to now, and they're in the Premier League, outcompeting global giants like Chelsea and Manchester United. But how is this even possible? The big teams have billion-dollar budgets and worldwide fan bases, giving them such an unfair advantage. They've also set up corrupt rules like PSR that stops other teams from reinvesting into their squads, but that's a story for another day. But despite this disadvantage, Brighton's owner, Tony Bloom, isn't a typical football owner. He's a professional sports bettor who built one of the most sophisticated analytics operations in the game. His company, StarLizard, runs predictive models on football the same way hedge funds model markets. Meanwhile, Manchester United and Chelsea are out there buying overpriced talent and praying for chemistry. Brighton's advantage comes from their predictive models. They use data to find undervalued players, build smarter lineups, and play a style that fits the numbers. And Tony Bloom uses those same models in his betting syndicate to crush the sportsbooks. He's not just building a football club. He's printing money for himself and his investors, using the exact same principles. But I know some of you might be thinking that building your own models is impossible. You might think that you're competing against bookmakers with an army of super nerds crunching numbers 24/7. But the truth is that most bookmakers don't do this because they're not trying to predict the outcome of results. That would be very expensive, and they can make their money in an easier way. Because here's how the sports books really work. They start by setting a line that's not perfect, but close enough. And as bets come in, they adjust the line to balance the action on both sides. Their goal isn't to predict the outcome perfectly, it's to make sure the money is evenly split so they can collect the VIG, which is the 2 to 3% edge they keep. That's why even matchups are often priced at -110 on both sides, because they're locking in that profit regardless of who wins. So building your own models, you can actually profit if you focus on niche markets without much competition. Since there isn't as much volume being traded in these markets, the sportsbooks don't put much focus here, which gives you an opportunity to find an edge. That's why we take a top-down approach in the community. Building bottom-up models can work, but it's tough. You need time, data, and a lot of trial and error. So if you're just getting started, I recommend sticking with top-down for now. Just use your accounts wisely. Yes, even the ones under your cousin's name, and build your edge before the books catch on. But if you want to learn how we do it in our community and be around others doing the same, check out the link to the community in the description. But how do you even build a sports betting model? Well, to keep things simple, here's a basic sports betting model. Now, just to be clear, this isn't a good model. You won't beat the market, but what I want to do is show the foundations so you can go build your own models. So let's say you're betting NFL point spreads. You start by looking at each team's average margin of victory over their last 5 games. Now, if Team A wins by an average of 7 and Team B loses by an average of 6, you predict Team A should be favored by around 13. That's a dead simple model with only one variable, but it's a starting point. Real models go way deeper, sometimes with 100 different numbers. They factor in injuries, quarterback performance under pressure, weather, offensive line metrics, travel fatigue, even referee tendencies. But you don't build all of that on day one. You start with version 1, test it on previous games, and see where it fails. Then you add 2 or 3 more variables and repeat. And over time, your model evolves to become more accurate. But even then, it's never finished. The market adapts, books adjust, and what worked last season might not work anymore. That's why real bettors don't post their models online, because once the edge is common knowledge, it's gone. So earlier we broke down how pro bettors are using Wall Street style tactics to win. But strategy alone isn't enough. What really separates winners from losers is the small daily habits most people don't even notice. So if you want to stay sharp and actually profit long term, watch this next video, where I covered the 6 habits that help me bet consistently and avoid the traps. It's right here on the screen, go check it out.